in the previous tutorial video, I accidentally actually click on this particular button there. It's called Run Student Tester with Coverage. So in case you did it as well, so now you can see we got the annoying annotation over here about 76% of line covered or whatever annotation you might have. So how do we get rid of this? So just go to Grado over here at the site, and then you should see the panel over here for Coverage Student Tester over here, the coverage. And you can simply just close that panel over there, just close. After that, you will see that all the annotations are removed. Okay, just in case. Okay, so now for this tutorial video, we're going to define a new accessor method. Okay, it's going to be an interesting one to see. So now you can see this is what we got so far. You can see we got the marks for the previous developments. We got 72 for 1022, 65 for 2030, we got 81 for 3311. And we know the corresponding letter grades for each one of them. So we also got the, remember, we have the getLetterGrade method on the course record objects, right? So for this one here, 72, I think is B. And then for 65 is C+. And also for 81 is A. Okay, so now, somehow for letter grades, we can also see what the corresponding grade point is. We can also have a simple scheme for calculating this. Let's say for B, it's, let's say A is 8, B plus is 7.5, B is 7, and C plus is 6.5, and etc. Okay, so B will be 7.0. For C plus, that should be 6.5, and for A, that should be 8.0. And for A plus, that will be 9.0. Okay, so we got these three grade points accordingly, and now we would like to calculate the GPA, the grade point average for this particular students. So how do we do that? So now you can see this. Before we define the methods, let's see how we expect the method to be used. So the context object is students s, which refer to this particular object over here, and then we have the method called getGPA. Okay, let me just use a different color to highlights. Get GPA over here. So now, in order to get a GPA, do we have to find any matching course record like what we did for set marks and get marks? We don't have to, right? Because somehow we have to accumulate the grade points for all the course records and then calculate the average accordingly. So there's no matching courses to find out. We're going to examine every course record. So that means the index of course method that we did before should not be applicable in this case. Okay, that's okay because it's just a different problem we are trying to solve. Okay, so you can see there's no input parameters over here, no arguments. So that means we can simply just calculate without any extra inputs. We can just calculate based on just the marks for every course record objects. Let's think about the idea before I start programming in Java. The idea is very simple. Again, we're going to use NOC over here, which is pointing to, you can think about 3 is currently, NOC is referring to this particular index over here. That means from 0 up to, but excluding NOC, 0, 1, and 2 in this case, the indices are already occupied by some course record objects. In this case, that means eventually what we want to do, we want to go iteration by iteration, each element in the each non-null slots in the array. So we want to go, first of all, in the first iteration, we'll go for this particular course record over here. In the second iteration, we'll go for this one over here. Let me use a different color. In the second iteration, we'll go for increment the loop counter and then go for this particular course record. And then for the third iteration, we'll go increment the counter again and then examine this particular course record. And then, of course, we exit from the loop as soon as we hit NOC, right? That's what we learned from the previous video. And now, for every iteration, the current course record that we're looking at, so what should we do? So somehow, for any course record we're looking at, we'll go to its marks, for example, 72, and then apply some if-then-else scheme to actually translate the numerical marks into its, first of all, before we can translate, we can simply given the course record objects, for example, CR1, we can simply say get letter grades. Okay, let me remind you very quickly, we did implement this method several videos before. Okay, So now if you go to the course record class, you can see that we do have a getLetterGrade method over here. So we do have it. So we can definitely reuse it. That's why I want to show you the different usages of helper methods. Let's go back here. So once we get a letter grades over here, let's say B, and now we can apply some if then else scheme to translate from string letter grades into numerical grade points, which can be fractional, has a decimal point, in which case that should be a double. Okay. Once we get a grade point here, we're gonna have some variables. Let's say maybe sum. Okay. So sum is going to be initially, let's say 0.0. So now after the first iteration, we should really accumulate sum by 7.0. That means it should go from this to 7.0. Okay. And now when we get to the second iteration, we should really accumulate 6.5 on top of what sum is already is. Okay. So now we're going to accumulate that. So that'll be 13.5. Okay. And when we go to the third iteration over here, added on top, so that means that will be 81.5. Oh, sorry, 21.5. 21.5. And after this, eventually, once we have accumulated all the sum, we can divide the sum by the number of courses we have, which is exactly 3, divided by 3, which will be 8 point something. Oh, sorry, not 8 point something. Sorry, very good, very bad in math. So that will be 7.1 something. Okay, so the overall GPA should be 7.1 something. Okay, that should be the return value. Okay, that's conceptually how we're gonna do. That's how the method should be executed. But let's see how we can define the method so that its behavior will be exactly as expected. Okay, it's not too hard. Okay, you will see that everything I said over here as illustration will be translated into Java quite nicely. Okay, quite neatly. So let's go back to our student class, and let's say we define this method here after set marks. Okay, so now we can define a new method there. GPA is a grade point average, which can be fractional. So let's say double rather than integer. Okay, double getGPA. Okay, and then as we said before, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have some double sum is 0.0. Eventually, we're going to return. Let's say after this, of course, we're going to do some loop over here to actually accumulate the sum. After that, we're going to say double GPA is going to be assigned to sum divided by this dot number of courses. Notice that it will be wrong if you simply say this dot courses dot length. This is absolutely wrong because in this case over here, you can see that the array is not entirely occupied. So this courses length will be 5. That's wrong because it should be divided by 3 rather than 5. Okay, that's why you should really say this NOC. Notice that there are most of the cases you should use NOC instead of this course length. There will be some cases you may have to use this course length. Okay, there might be some cases. For example, in the toString method over here, we did use this course length simply because we wanted to print out the contents of the array. In which case, you can see we did have some special cases for the null case. In which case, we simply say null rather than calling the method. Okay. So now let's go back to getGPA. So now GPA will be sum divided by this NOC and then return GPA. Okay, let me just again give you a warning over here. Having sum divided by this courses length is wrong. Okay, so now what's really left is about how we can accumulate the value for the sum. How do we do that? Okay, say for integer I is assigned to 0, and then what's going on here? Okay, now resolve symbol GPA double. Did I spell it wrong? GPA. GPA. Okay, now resolve symbol. Let me just continue with this. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I think that because I'm just typing the for loop partially, so that's why it's complaining. Okay, let's now go back to the for loop. Okay, so now let's say I is assigned to 0, I less than this dot NOC. Notice that it's NOC as the upper bound, and then I plus plus. Okay, I can now simply just accumulate. The simplest way to write this, the neatest way, would be sum plus equal, and then I can say this dot courses at position I, which is guaranteed to be valid because I have strictly less than this dot NOC. Okay, and then dot marks. Okay, if you simply do this, is that right or not? It's actually not right? Because the marks over here is things like, for example, 72. Right? So that's not something we want to accumulate about. We want to accumulate somehow from 72 where we want to go to letter grade and then go to the grade point. Grade point and marks, they are different concepts over here. So what we set over here is simply, even though it looks very neat, but it's wrong. Absolutely wrong. Okay? So what we should do, let's be careful over here. So what I should say is integer. So what we should do is, rather than using the marks, we want to first of all get a letter grade. Okay, so now what we can do is string LG, which is letter grade, is assigned to this dot courses at position I, which is the current course that we are talking about. You can say dot get letter grade. Okay, you can see this is the students. This dot courses is the array of course records. This dot courses at position I is referring to some particular course record objects, which can be this one, it can be this one, or it can be this one. Okay, and then for each one of them, we simply call the get letter grade method, which will translate, for example, which will convert, for example, from 72 into B, from 65 into C plus, or from 81 into A. Okay, so now how do we convert? Okay, now let's do the let's just do it right here, and I will show you very quickly how you can factor out that particular mechanism into a separate method. Okay, so now we can say if LG equals, let's say, A plus. Okay, so now also we can define double grade point GP. Okay, it's let's say it's simply 0.0, or we can say just -1, simply invalid. But we'll get a chance to eventually reassign that. So LG equals A plus, GP will be reassigned to 9.0. Okay, and then we can say else if, we can say LG equals, and then we can have A. Okay, hopefully you get an idea. And then GP is assigned to 8.0, and then let's just be complete. I believe we got all the way down to C, right? Else if, and then we got B plus over here, which is 7.5, and also we have B over here, which is 7.0, and also we have C plus. As you can see, the code gets a little bit, the method gets a little bit too long. That's why whenever you find that your method is getting too long, you may want to factor out some certain part into a helper method. Okay, I'll show you in just a moment. 6.5. Let's make sure it's correct first. And then finally, else if, also we can have C, and then that'll be 6.0. Let's say for our purpose, of course, if you say else, that means a failure. In which case, grade point, I'll just say 5.0. Okay, it could be 0.0, doesn't matter. Okay, for this case, let's say. So now you can see this block of code over here is going to guarantee to reassign GP from -1 into something. Okay, you can see the default case else will be 5.0. Okay, once we got a GP, so now we can say sum plus equal GP. Okay, that's how we accumulated grade points. Okay. So now that's about the getGPA method over here. Let's get rid of this line here. So now let's try to calculate. Okay, and then I'll show you how you can improve that a little bit. Let's go to student tester over here, and then let's calculate that. So you can say as out, and then GPA of students. You can say plus s dot get GPA. Okay, let's see how it calculates. Okay, you can launch the student tester and see what we have. Okay, so now that's 7.1666667, which is similar to what we expected, right? Okay, I already show you how you can think about the process, and let's format it a little bit more carefully. Okay, so now we simply just want to format this particular double value, so we can say string dot formats $.2f, and then we can just put this double value as a second parameter. Okay, so now let's try again. So that means we should get 7.17. Okay, that seems to be correct, the calculation. Okay, so now let me show you how you can simplify this a little bit. You can see that this method over here, if you want to go over that, you can see this particular part of the conversion dominates most of the lines, which is not a good sign, because when you look at the method, you want to be able to see each individual step quite clearly. So what we can do to improve the readability of your code is by, oh, sorry, not here. If you go to student class, that's where I meant to see. So you can see that this particular part is basically showing the conversion from from letter grades into grade points. But this part here dominates most of the lines for the getGPA method. So we don't want that. We want this particular fragment to be shortened so that we can see more clearly exactly overall what the getGPA method is really going to achieve. How can we do that? We can simply define a helper method over here. We know that the purpose for this block of code is going to say, thinking this way. We're going to take the letter grades, which is a string, and then return a double number for the grade points. Exactly what we want to do, right? So exactly how you can see how to refactor some fragment of code into a helper method is really up to your experience. I can only show you some example and then show you some little bit insight. So in this case, we know that GP is the double value we would like to assign. You can think about eventually we're going to have a method which will return exactly the value we want to assign to GP. Okay. So now what we can do is over here, double, let's say get GP. What about that? And then we can say string letter grade. Okay. So now what I can do is I will simply just cut that part of the code. I'll put it there, and then over here, double GP is, let's say, -1, and then eventually I will return GP. Okay, that's a method. So now we can simplify that by saying double GP is assigned to this dot getGP, and then letter grade. Okay, you can see it's much neater. It's only one line of code. Of course, this line of code also refers indirectly to just another method, but you can see now it's not much focused. You can see if we refer to this particular method, it only does one thing, which is to do the conversion. And also, if we look at the original method over here, we can see much more clearly the steps that are involved to calculate the GPA. So we're going to run over from 0 until this NOC -1 positions, and then we're going to first of all get the letter grades, and then convert to get a grade points, accumulate the grade points, and then eventually do the average calculation. Okay, so now just a matter of style, but it's better that you adopt this as you go for your exercises. Okay, let's try again to make sure this works. Every time you do any refactoring, you should always retest your code to make sure it runs well. Okay, we still got the right result for calculating the GPA. Okay, so now for this tutorial video, basically we just show you how you can define this getGPA method and to really factor out one of the steps over here into just another helper method. And one more thing to note, okay, you can see that getGPA method over here, we are not really trying to find any matching course record. We're basically iterate through all the course record and try to do something for every one of them, try to accumulate. So that is why we are not really trying to use the previous helper method, which is called index of course. It's simply not applicable in this case. Okay.